What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Going the Distance podcast presented by ImmaculateSports.com. Twitter's at ImmaCSports.
Instagram is also at ImmaCSports.
TikTok, YouTube, Immaculate Sports. It's episode 266. It's starting right now at 4:30, the first game of the NBA season. So we got a full NBA season preview along with some other stuff, the two other sports that have been going on.
Yeah, very much a all over the place week this week. We're doing, I wouldn't say a full in-depth NBA season preview, but we got some stuff that we're going to talk about there. Playoff bracket predictions, some awards. We're going to look at the NFL and the MVP check-in there. That's fun to do. And then we have to do a World Series prediction because we got the World Series coming up starting on Friday. It's going to be a good one. The Blue Jays and the Dodgers, of course. And I think the thing I'm most excited about in this episode is that we get to see a new score bug with NBA on Peacock or NBC. So we get a live reaction to what that score bug looks like, which is something I always like seeing. Hopefully it's not trash. I used to like TNTs when they did that for basketball. So hopefully it's something similar there. I think there's a lot of cast members kind of renewed there, but regardless,
like Tirico, busy man.
Yeah, we'll have a live reaction to that once that comes out and the game gets going there. But before then, we've got a couple of good openers. Skylar, why don't you go ahead and tell me about yours?
Yeah, the college football season has been unbelievable through half of the regular season so far, and there are still so many schools that just aren't going to be talked about because they're not going to the playoff this year. And one of those teams was in the playoff last year, Boise State. UNLV is a team that a lot of people wanted to see in the playoff. They were 6-0 headed into this game. So pretty relieving to see the Broncos win big, 56-31. They go over 500 yards. Maddox Madsen has had a pretty average season compared to last year. But Boise's kind of been able to recreate that backfield with that Ashton Genty, specifically sophomore running back Dylan Riley. He had 200 yards on 15 carries, and he's 11th in the nation already with like 50 less carries than Jeremiah Love. So definitely looks like another NFL caliber back. Great to watch those guys in the blue and the orange. Also, rest in peace, Doug Martin, another Bronco. Just, grew up watching him and Kellen Moore just like destroy teams they had no business beating. Oh, a tough one.
Yeah. For my opener, I'm going to George Springer's legendary moment that we saw happen last night in the seventh inning of Game 7 in the MLB ALCS between the Blue Jays and the Mariners. First off, Game 7s in the MLB are rare. We only have 3 postseason series a year that could possibly go 7 games. They often don't go that far. It feels like nowadays we're getting more and more blowouts in these long series. But it wasn't that way in the ALCS, a great series in between the Jays and the Mariners that went back and forth. Mariners go up 2-0. Toronto then wins the next 2. Seattle wins the next one, and then Toronto wins the final 2, of course. And the Game 7 moment with George Springer hitting a homer to take the lead in the 7th inning to make it 4-3 was just so iconic, and it was so baseball. Like, things that happen within the sport, history tends to repeat itself. Things that have happened once have a way of appearing again. And as you saw in our group chat, Skyler, I could kind of just feel it coming with George Springer, and promptly said, 3-4 minutes before it happened, that George Springer is going to have his Jose Bautista moment. There's a lot of parallels in those 2 moments as well, too. A winner take all game in the 7th inning. The opposing team had 3 runs, and the ball went pretty much not the exact same spot. I think Jose Bautista had another 30, 40 feet on his ball, but very similar spots when it comes to direction off the bat. And for it to come from George Springer, who's one of the greatest, if not the greatest, postseason hitter of all time. They showed a stat post-game that George Springer has 9 career game-winning home runs in not World Series games. That'd be nuts. In postseason games, which I think is the most all time.
That's crazy.
And just to have that many big hits and big moments is ridiculous. And I know the Astros, just being on that team for so long, you kind of get prompted with those moments and you kind of forget about them. but he's making, another name for himself over there in Toronto, and I'm sure that country is just absolutely soaking it up right now. So George Springer, legendary moment. We don't get moments quite like those in the MLB too often. We got one last year with Freddie Freeman and his walk-off home run in Game 1 of the World Series. We'll see if we get some in the World Series this year, but this has got to be the moment that stands out for pretty much everybody this season. Moving on, though, as we go to Where's Your Head At, starting off with the players of the week in the NFL. Whole bunch of fun performances all around. We'll start it off with player of the week. Did you choose one of the 8 running backs that felt like they went for 200 yards this week, or who did you choose here?
I did choose one of them. I got to shout out my guy, Joe Flacco, for that Thursday night football game. Pretty unbelievable. But I am going to go with Jahmyr Gibbs. 20 touches, 218 yards, and 2 touchdowns pretty much in about 2.5 quarters of that game. He just shot out of a cannon against Tampa Bay like he was playing for the Bucks or something like that. And, the rest of the offense couldn't get anything going. That was big. I guess you could say the same thing about McCaffrey and many at Taylor, but I think Gibbs really looked the part last night.
Yeah, Jahmyr Gibbs, give me my player of the week as well, too. Just 20 touches, but over 215 total yards, 2 touchdowns, one of them being over 75 yards, whatever it was. So fun to watch when he's in the open field. I do think that play that he got the screen pass where it's him and Penei Sewell out running on the bottom of the screen, and Antoine Winfield somehow got through Penei Sewell and tackled Jahmyr Gibbs in the open field. That is a ridiculous play, but Antoine Winfield isn't being talked about enough. But Jahmyr Gibbs, player of the week for sure. On to defensive player of the week.
I got to go with J.C. Horn. 2 acrobatic interceptions off of Tyrod Taylor. And one of the ongoing jokes of Jets Twitter during that game was Sauce needs to watch some J.C. Horn film from this game. But honestly, they're not wrong because Horn plays that same style of really handsy man coverage, yet he's able to make 2 crazy plays on the ball too in this one.
Whole bunch of different players had good weeks. I decided to go with former Raider Caleb Von Chason, who did have a fumble recovery touchdown that really wasn't caused by him. He just kind of ran into the football at the right time. But he did have 2 sacks for the Patriots in their big win over the Titans. So I did go Caleb Von for his big game there.
Word.
On to Rookie of the Week.
Jackson Dart and Cam Ward both kind of threw their games away. So I chose Arondé Gadsden. The new Chargers H-back had another game with 7 catches, but this time he goes for 164 and a touchdown. He's really just the perfect fit for this offense right now because they don't run the ball. So, why not use an H-back instead of a running back?
Yeah, my Rookie of the Week is also going to be Arondé Gadsden. 7 catches, 164 yards, and a touchdown. His big game in the loss for the Chargers against the Colts, in which Herbert threw for over 400 yards. I was thinking about putting Joe Flacco as the honorary Rookie of the Week, just because why not? But I felt like I could stick to the terms here and go that. So Arondé Gadsden, a guy I didn't even know of a couple of weeks ago, having a really big week in the NFL. It's cool to see. On to our MVP check-in in the NFL through 7 weeks. We do this every couple of weeks. Good thing to check in. NFL MVP is also so volatile in this first at least half or 3/4 of the season. And so I feel like it's good to check in quite often. We'll start off with any honorable mentions before we get into the top 5.
Yeah, Dak Prescott's putting up award-type numbers. I just don't know if I would give it to him because I don't like the way his team plays. Similar with Matt Stafford. They're going to have the numbers, but also the 2 Lions players. I felt like I didn't have a spot for them, St. Brown and Gibbs. I'll shout out McCaffrey, too.
My honorable mentions, bunch of quarterbacks and wide receiver and running back. Drake May, been really good for the Patriots. I think you can make a case for that receiving core still isn't that good. Run game isn't that great either, and he's been balling out with it, so I think he's deserving some notice now, even if they play the biggest Mickey Mouse schedule in the entire league. Patrick Mahomes, been balling out this entire season, has another good game against the Raiders that I don't even want to talk about. Patrick Mahomes is there, of course. Matthew Stafford, 5-touchdown game against the Jags, who have had a pretty stingy defense this entire year. 17 touchdowns is, I believe, the most in the NFL now at this point in the season, with only 2 interceptions. So Matt Stafford's been balling. Bijan Robinson's close to 1,000 all-purpose yards already at this point in the season, which is rare through 7 games, or 6 games actually, because they had a bye. So Bijan's been balling. Jalen Hurts, I think, has had a really good season as well, too. He threw for 300 yards for the first time in over a year on Sunday. Still showing that side of him, I think, is important for him if he wants to be in an MVP. I know he doesn't probably give a shit about it, but regardless, he's having a great season. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown, maybe not the craziest game, but I still feel like he's super valuable to that Lions team. And on third down or whatever it may be, Jared Goff seems to be going to him with the football. So Amon-Ra St. Brown is an honorable mention for me. And that is the 6 guys I wanted to talk about before getting into the top 5. And we'll get right into it with number 5. Who do you have here?
We'll start off with Jalen Hurts. I added him last week, and he has one of the best games of his career. So I got to keep him on. I think this is just the type of situation where we're going to see this every 2 games. Like A.J. Brown and some mostly A.J. Brown are going to be frustrated that they're running the ball 85% of the time. So they'll be like, hey, we still got this in our back pocket too, guys. I'm fine with Jalen Hurts. It's like 16 total touchdowns to 1 pick. Not a lot of guys are more valuable than him.
And number 5 for me is where I spot JSN, Jackson Smith, and Jigba. 50 catches, 819 yards, first in the NFL and 4 touchdowns. 3 straight games now with a touchdown and over 120 yards. And I think this game against the Texans is a perfect thing of it. You go into a rough matchup with Derek Stingley, who's been a pretty good one-on-one corner in his short time in the NFL. And JSN just puts him, makes him sit down and do whatever the fuck he wants. I know Stingley did get a pick in the game, but JSN definitely got better than him, quite a bit in that one. Yeah. And he's been the biggest reason why the Seahawks, I think, are 5-2 at this point. Most yards in the NFL. He's the only person with 700 receiving yards, and he has 819, on pace for that, crazy 2,000-yard type season, which we don't see often, or haven't seen ever, but we don't see guys on pace for it that often in this point in the season. And JSN's been balling in his, 3rd year now in the NFL, so props to him. Number 4.
Yeah, a lot of people probably wish they could have went back and taken JSN, including the Jets. But number 4 is where I got Jonathan Taylor, same spot as before, and 3 more touchdowns this week. He's got 10 now. He's unstoppable. The Colts look legit. And I think we're all on board. This is the captain of the squad, even though Danny Dimes has been fantastic too.
Yeah. Number 4 is where I spot Baker Mayfield. And he was at number 1 for the past couple of times that we did this. Move him down to number 4 here, and he showed why he's not the NFL MVP last night against the Lions. I know he's playing with the banged-up receivers core, a lot of guys that he doesn't have a ton of reps with, but you could definitely make the case that he's the reason why they didn't win that game. A lot of inaccurate throws, maybe would have been tough throws, but if you're the MVP, you make those throws. I don't want to harp too hard on Baker Mayfield because he's had a phenomenal season. But last night wasn't a prettiest game for him. And so I think he's deservingly not in that number 1 spot anymore. Still a great season, though. Number 4 is great. Number 3.
Yeah, number 3 is where I got Baker Mayfield. Also got to move him down. He does play quarterback. So, it's not as simple as college where it's like, okay, this is your one bad game. This is one people might remember because he looked like Brown's Baker last night. This is like the first time in his Tampa career he's been pressured like this. That's what I talked about with Sham. He's like, what's wrong with Baker? Is there something with his arm? No, dude, he's running for his life. But yeah, I agree with you. He's probably not the MVP. I'm going to slightly move him down. Quarterback's important. I won't drop him down below Jonathan Taylor yet.
Number 3 is where I slot Dak Prescott. Been absolutely balling ever since that loss to the Bears. 13 touchdowns, no interceptions, good yardage in each game. And I think the most important part about Dak Prescott and what he's done this season that nobody's really talking about is that he, had this 4-game stretch where he had no CD Lamb, and it really did not affect him at all. He's been balling the whole time. When he comes back, of course he gets, I wouldn't even say better because he's just been doing so good the past few games, but doesn't drop or change his production at all. Dak Prescott's been great. I know they lost to the Panthers a couple of weeks ago, which obviously hinders your MVP odds, but it wasn't because of him, that's for sure. He's been balling out this entire year, and I think it's time he starts getting some recognition in this world. Number 2.
Sure, absolutely. Dak is very high on the list of teams that would very quickly fall apart without them. But I also think Josh Allen is too. I'm going to keep him on here, even though it was 2 rough games in a row. Since we've talked, he had that loss to Atlanta, 2 bad picks. So I guess it is still in his system, but I expect him to do very big things, keep putting up big numbers. I'm not going to talk about his stats because he's coming off a bye week. He's going to be below everybody, of course, but I think he's still alive because Buffalo's dangerous. Just wait until they play New England. I'm sure he's going to want to put up some crazy numbers.
Number 2 for me is where I saw Christian McCaffrey. Just like the most involved guy in any offense this entire year. He has 31 touches against the Falcons on Sunday Night Football and over 200 yards. Game prior, he has 24 touches. The game before that, he has 30 touches. The game before that, he has 23 touches. Game before that, 27 touches. Like, he's the most involved guy outside of a quarterback that we've ever seen in an offense, I think. At least in this modern day where you're not giving your running back the ball 40 times a game or whatever it may be. And he's been so good. Defenses know it's coming, even with guys like Kittle out for most of the season. Ayuk hasn't played yet. Pearsall's been hurt. Jawan Jennings has been hurt, and Christian McCaffrey's still been able to produce. And that's pretty remarkable. And now he's starting to get the touchdowns to go with it. And I think if that stays, there's a serious chance that we're looking at a 2,000-yard all-purpose season at least, with 15 to 20 touchdowns as well too. And then the MVP through 7 weeks is who?
I guess I am a little more cautious with the running backs because I don't have one up here. I had Patrick Mahomes. I kind of just like, even though McCaffrey's done everything he's been asked to do, and same with Jonathan Taylor, I just got to see it a little more. Todd Gurley didn't win MVP, and he's doing what Jonathan Taylor's doing. So I did put Mahomes up there. 18 touchdowns, 2 picks. It's been a very sloppy supporting cast for Kansas City. And Mahomes is another guy who just didn't really care. They're 4-1 after the slow start. Rashee Rice is back. He's somehow the number 1 fantasy quarterback the year where I take a different one high and he gets hurt. That's just how it goes, man. And I think Kansas City is immediately back into the top 5 if we were to do power rankings this week, thanks to Patrick Mahomes pretty much by himself.
Number 1 for me is going to be Jonathan Taylor. Maybe not as much usage as Christian McCaffrey. I know he's still second in carries, first in yards, but just his ability to score touchdowns and be so good in the red zone is why he's so high up on here. He's got 10 rushing touchdowns in 7 games this season, with the receiving one as well too. 11 total touchdowns is the most by any non-quarterback in the league right now. And he's just so fun to watch on first and second down. It never feels like the Colts are in a bad spot or behind the sticks when it comes to third down. And that's because of him. They control the football. He's the biggest reason why they're 6-1 and have the best record in all of football. And I think that's valuable when it comes down to it. I know maybe Daniel Jones should be on here. He's been playing really good. This is really the first game against the Chargers that I really watched that full game with the Colts and really diagnosed what Daniel Jones was doing. He was great, don't get me wrong, but Jonathan Taylor is just so damn good. And if the Colts end up going 14-3 or something like that, and Jonathan Taylor has 24 touchdowns on the season and approaches 1,700, 1,800 rushing yards, I think you're looking at a real case for an NFL MVP at the running back position. I think he could do it, which would be really cool to see. for his career and just the insane stat lines that he's put up from college to now.
Got to pray
All right.
no one hits 50 passing touchdowns.
Yeah, that'll definitely hinder it.
Yeah.
And I thought we were past that, a couple of years ago. I think last year, what was it, like the most was like 35 or something like that. But now we're starting to see guys chuck it again, and that's pretty good. Maybe that's because of the kickoffs being moved up, and you get those extra 5 yards on touchbacks and whatnot. That's a conversation for another day. But anyways, we'll move into our NBA playoff bracket predictions. So I just have teams 1 through 8 here on each side. I didn't do a play-in prediction. I just, did the 1 and 8 seed and 2 and 7 seed and so forth. Once the game gets back on, we'll go into, and talk about the score bug as well too. So maybe we do the West playoffs, talk about the score bug, and then get into the East playoffs. So we'll start off with, that first round. 1 versus 8. Who is your 1 seed? Who is your 8 seed? And who comes out as the winner in that scenario?
I got OKC against San Antonio in this one. So I actually did on my own spreadsheet just because I wanted to last week. I did the whole 15 for both sides. So Spurs lose to my 7 seed and then they beat the Lakers and get here. I think OKC would probably win this one easily. I have OKC in 5. Will be really fun to watch Wembanyama in this kind of environment. I just don't think OKC is the right matchup for them here.
Yeah. I also want to preface my NBA predictions with I'm not an expert. This is the third sport it comes to for me when it comes to predictions. So I'm not going to, if I say something wrong, I'm not really hold myself too accountable there. They're just fun predictions here. I do have the same series though. OKC 1 versus 8 seeded San Antonio. They get in for the first time in the Victor Wembanyama era. And OKC wins in 5. Victor, has a big game in one of those, but they're nowhere near as a complete team. J-Dub will be back by then as well too, of course. And OKC should be just fine in that series. 2 versus 7. What do you have here?
I got Denver playing the Warriors. The Warriors make it out of the play-in. The 7, in my situation, they win a home game against San Antonio, which will be absolutely nuts if that happens. But I am going to take Denver in 6 here, even though I'll be rooting for the Warriors in whatever series, just because it's a way deeper team than the Warriors. We're arguing right now if Podziemski or Kuminga or Will Richard or Gary Payton should be playing the shooting guard minutes. It's like, oh, we are fucked if we get deep into the playoffs. So I'm sticking with Denver. I like them.
For me, I have 2-seeded Houston versus 7-seed Minnesota. I like Houston this year. Their starting lineup is so damn tall, and I think is going to be so ridiculous on defense. It'll be really tough when it comes to playoff time. And then having the big-time scorer in Kevin Durant when you need it in late minutes, a guy that's been there, that's done it in the past, is going to be really big, I think. So I have Houston winning in 6. I definitely think Ant, upshoots Minnesota in the playoffs a little bit to get a couple of good games in there and maybe steal a couple of games from the Rockets, but it's not going to be enough to get it done. Houston wins in 6. 3 versus 6.
All right. My number 3 seed is Minnesota. I have them not missing a beat from last year. Number 6, the Clippers. I see the Clippers and Minnesota both pretty much dominating the regular season in this crazy Western Conference, but I just can't help but worry if the Clippers are going to be ready or not for a series like this. So I have Minnesota in 7. I would expect every matchup in the West to be very close, especially a 3-6, 4-5. But I am going to take Minnesota. I like them a little more than you with Ant.
My 3 seed is the Denver Nuggets, and my 6 seed is also the Los Angeles Clippers. This will be a great series, one of those more defensive-focused series, even with a team in Denver that usually doesn't have that, but I think the Clippers will force that in that series. So I do think it's close. I'll go Denver in 7 games. They've won the chip before. I think that's enough to say they've done it before. This Clippers team has not. So Denver in 7. 4 versus 5.
This is my favorite matchup, and I have a feeling it's going to be yours too because of a team you haven't mentioned yet. But this is the All-Texas series. 4-seeded Houston takes on 5-seeded Dallas. And I'm going to take Dallas in an upset here in 6 games. I think Dallas's defense is going to be an absolute horse this year. And Houston just really needs a second step from Amen Thompson offensively. Like, I think everyone's on board. This kid is a freak. We've been able to watch him move around the floor like it's nothing in just his 3rd year. But I think we need a shooting type of step from him if they're going to have him play point guard in the playoffs against maybe Kyrie's back. Maybe Cooper Flagg is the best defending point guard because he's it's just hard to, if you don't know Cooper Flagg's playing point guard this year until Kyrie comes back. And it's just crazy to think about because he's massive and a great defender. So I'm going to take Dallas. That's my wild card of the West.
My 4 versus 5, it would probably be my favorite series because it's the Warriors versus the Lakers here. The Warriors on ESPN, I believe, are projected to be the second best team in the West by win total, is what I saw. And I don't know if I agree with that, but the Warriors were really good once they got Jimmy Butler last year. And I don't think that can be ignored. I don't know if you can, make a case that this team got substantially better in the offseason at all, but I don't think they got worse. I think there's some good supplemental pieces, bringing back Melton, actually having a legitimate shooting center that can play some defense too. And now Horford, Quentin Post, of course, obviously still does some good things there as well too. This Lakers team, without LeBron to start the season, I think it's a perfect runway for Luka to just have that ridiculous season that he's kind of produced in Dallas so many different times. I think they've built a pretty good supporting cast around them as well too. So when LeBron comes back, they're not going to be completely under the 8 ball and in the 12 seed or something like that. So they should be fine there. I do have the Warriors winning in 6 games. Usually the Lakers seem to be the Warriors' kryptonite, but I think they get the better of them here and win in 6. Dallas, I did write in 9 and 10 seeds as well too. I had Dallas as a 9 seed and Memphis as a 10 seed. Kyrie's just out for who knows how long, and that really does scare me. Anthony Davis, I know he was really healthy a couple of years ago, but how much can you really rely on his health as well too? And at the end of the day, Cooper Flagg's still a rookie. Like, I can't forget that. I picked the Spurs to go to the finals in Wemby's first year or something like that. And that is obviously something that went completely wrong. But yeah. I don't want to make that same mistake here. I want to keep Dallas outside for now. If they do it, that's fine. Memphis, I don't know how teams are picking them to make the playoffs. It just doesn't make sense to me. Desmond Bane's gone. He's way better than what people are making it out to be. It's a very dysfunctional franchise in Memphis, I think, for now. So they're outside of that. Let's move to the second round, though. 1 versus 4 and 2 versus 3 for both of us, I think.
I have a 1-5 OKC Dallas in the upset crazy wild card pick. Their crazy run ends, though, when they reach OKC. I have it in 6 games, though. I mean, we might see some games from like the Spurs Pistons finals of the past where the final score is in the 80s for both teams, but I would still love it. And I'm still taking OKC.
My 1 versus 4 is OKC versus the Warriors. The Warriors have handled OKC pretty well in their, brief reign of the NBA. I don't know really what it is, but they just seem to play good against them. I don't think it's going to be enough to win the series in this case with the unction for the Warriors, but I think taking them to 6 or 7 games is reasonable. And so I have OKC in 7 before advancing to the conference finals. On to the 2 versus 3. What do you have here?
I got Denver and Minnesota. I'm taking Denver in 7. They have Jokic until he proves that he can't make it to the next round. I'm going to keep taking them. Remember, they took OKC to 7 last year. And I'll get more deep into this matchup later. Well, in a minute, but OKC Denver rematch for the Western Conference Finals.
My 2 versus 3 is Houston versus Denver. Houston is the 2 seed, Denver's 3 seed. I have Houston in 6 games. I think if there's a defense that could stop Jokic, it'd probably be Houston. I think that makes sense with the guys that they have. I think they'll suffocate the shooters around him as well too, is completely reasonable. So I got Houston in 6 games, setting up an OKC versus Houston Western Conference Finals.
Well, all right. For me, OKC Denver, a matchup we've seen many times before, but I think things are different this year. It looks like a much better fit around Jokic. I like that Westbrook is gone. He basically blew that series against OKC for him last year. Replacing him, coming in, Cam Johnson, great shooter, and Valanciunas. They get him to not go back to Europe. He stays as kind of a big man that can play when Jokic goes back to point guard in the second half. And they come into an already very deep defensive-minded team. My thinking is it is just so hard to go 2 years in a row. I'm going to take Denver over OKC in 7.
My 1 versus 2 is OKC versus Houston, the exact matchup we're watching right now. So whoever wins this game is getting in. That's how I'm determining it. No, just kidding. I think this should be a great series. I think these two teams are very evenly matched, but very differently built up and how they like to play. I feel like OKC is a very small roster most of the time. Even with Chet out there, he's a 7-footer, but sometimes he doesn't always feel 7 feet. And I think a guy like Steven Adams could really disrupt him still with how strong Steven Adams is. So I'll go Houston in 7 games.
Okay.
I think that'll be a great series. And Houston gets to the finals the first time since the 90s.
Yeah, 96 with Elijah Wan.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
That's when
Houston,
Jordan went to play baseball.
Yeah. So before we get into the Eastern playoffs and decide our winners over there, let's look at the scoreboard that we got going on right now in the NBC game. What are your initial thoughts? What are you thinking? What do you like? What don't you like about this?
I got to say, I'm a pretty big fan of the score bug off of my first impression. I like the idea that the logos are kind of like a ticket stub down in the middle too. It's not up top. It's big enough to see the actual score of the game and the fouls and stuff. That was kind of my pet peeve with ESPN, is when you have no idea who's in the bonus and who's not. So I think they figured it out. I think they were prepared at NBC. I like it.
Yeah. I do want to say I think NBC has the best football one right now. So, maybe that impacts my decision. I think it's better than CBS, Fox, NFL Network, Amazon, all those. I do kind of like this. I don't know if I love the sideways abbreviations,
Sure.
but I do like the color that they have in it. I think that's good. Trying to notice where I can see. Oh, the fouls are on there, but they're small on each side. That makes sense. I think it's pretty good. I like the color. I think that it's good. And maybe a team that doesn't have black as their secondary color will be good to see, kind of all the color in this.
Yeah.
Maybe make the writing a little bit bigger for the fouls and the bonus. I think it's really tough to see. But
I think they're only in trouble.
Fixing.
Yeah, when they go like alternate jerseys, they may find themselves in trouble. But until then, I'm fine with this.
Yeah, when the Lakers logo is white and blue instead of it'll be interesting to see. How about those Warriors like coffee jerseys? Those are
I'm not a fan, man. I'm not a fan.
Yeah, those are interesting.
Yeah.
Well, we'll hop into our Eastern playoffs now, and we'll get into those. We'll start off 1 versus 8. Who's your 1 seed? Who's your 8 seed? And who you got here?
All right. My number 1 seed is going to be Cleveland. Once again, I have them playing Toronto, a team that could be a surprise, but still, we're talking Eastern Conference still. So whoever makes it there is probably getting swept by Cleveland.
1 versus 8 for me is Cleveland 1, Atlanta 8, Cleveland in 4. That's all I need to say.
Okay.
2 versus 7.
Number 2, the New York Knicks. Mike Brown, no problem. They're playing Detroit, a team that I know, like we talk about with Sham and Alex, like I just think they're a year away. I'm sorry, guys. So I have the Knicks in 6. I do want to see them play the Knicks again, though. Who's number 2? Jaden Ivey just broke his leg. I don't know. Can the other Thompson twin shoot? We don't know yet. We just got to wait and see. Still got Detroit as a plan.
My 2 versus 7 is the Knicks versus Toronto. I like Toronto this year as well, too. I definitely think they could end up being a playoff team. I think they match up pretty well with the Knicks as well, too. So I'll have it go to 6 games, but the Knicks take that series. If they lose that, I'd be shocked. 3 versus 6.
Number 3, The Atlanta Hawks for me. I'm a fan of Atlanta this year. I know, right? Usual chokers. But here's the thing. Last year, they looked pretty good. They didn't have maybe their most important player, Jalen Johnson. Now Dyson Daniels is extended. And who am I forgetting? Nikhil Alexander Walker, sixth man. I think these guys are going to be really good. However, they play Boston. They lose in 7. Tatum will be back for this game. All Boston has to do is just make it here with Jaylen Brown and Anthony Simons and Derek White. Will they trade people? If they don't, I think they should be here in the 6th spot.
My 3 versus 6 is the Boston Celtics versus the 6-seeded Detroit Pistons, which I think will be a fun series. Hopefully Jason Tatum's back by then, because I did go Celtics in 5, which I think is reasonable if that does happen. This Boston team is somehow underrated still. I don't get how they're underrated. I think they did a great job in the offseason, changing their money around and doing what they need to do there while still remaining a very competitive team. So I'll go Boston in 5. Sets up a 4 versus 5. What do you got?
Yeah, I got Milwaukee hosting Orlando. Orlando's supposed to be another one of those teams that is way better this year. Obviously, we love Paolo. However, I'm going to take Milwaukee in 7. Miles Turner is there now. Big piece of that Indiana playoff run. And I don't think Giannis is going out that easily. This could very well be his last year in Milwaukee. And I really like their team.
Orlando versus Milwaukee is what I have as well, too. I haven't flip-flopped, though, so Orlando's a higher seed. And I'm taking Orlando in 7 games. I think Paulo's going to have a phenomenal year. Desmond Bane is a guy that I've always, I don't say admired, but I appreciate his game.
Yeah.
They play good defense as well, too. I think that's a pretty underrated aspect. And Milwaukee just seems to – I know they won a chip in 2021, but ever since then they seem to be chokers, I think is fair to say. So I'll go Orlando in 7. I think a great series, great players on both sides, but Orlando does get it done. So moving on to that second round in the Eastern playoffs, 1-seeded Cleveland is the same for us. 4 or 5 here. Who do you have and who's winning?
I have Cleveland in 6 over my 4-seed Milwaukee. I would love to pick Giannis again, but at some point having to rely on Kyle Kuzma and Gary Trent for all their shooting, may be able to beat Orlando, definitely not beating Cleveland.
Yeah, I want to preface something before I get into this series. I saw Indiana have a pretty good playoff odds, which I just don't quite understand without Halliburton and without Miles Turner now as well, too. So I'm not really seeing that. Maybe that would be like a win total under thing that I would take. But going back to this series, I have Cleveland versus Orlando. I'm going Cleveland in 6. Orlando's going to have a great year. I just think Cleveland's a better team. So that's the gist of it. Cleveland in 6. 2 versus 3. Who do you have here?
I got the Knicks and Boston, my 6th seed in this one. And I just think the Knicks have a better team this year. Knicks in 7. It's easy to pick an injured Boston team against some of the middle of the pack East teams, but in the second round, it's different. This is probably the ceiling for Boston this year, especially I mentioned earlier, they are rumors about Jaylen Brown or Derek White potentially being traded. So I'm not going to have them go any further than this. Knicks get them in 7.
My 2 versus 3 is the Knicks versus Boston. I have the Knicks in 7. I think Boston's going to be a great team, but I think the Knicks could be a little bit better. And that's what it comes down to. Knicks in 7 games, long series, so it could really go either way. I just have the Knicks taking that coin flip game 7. 1 versus 2 for me in the Eastern Conference Finals. What do you have here?
Yeah, same thing. Cleveland and New York. The Knicks may be the most locked and loaded team in the East, but this is still a new regime under Mike Brown. I think they do get to the finals with this group, just not this year. I think it's going to take some time to adjust. And I see big odds on guys like Josh Hart to do the same stuff he's been doing. And you got to remember, that's one of the negative parts of Tom Thibodeau being gone is the defense a little bit. So I am going to take Cleveland in 6 games.
My 1 versus 2 is Cleveland versus the Knicks. I think it's a fun series. And Cleveland, I just don't think has it when it comes to winning in the long term. So I'll go Knicks in 7. Will, having 6 games in a series and 7 games in a series and then 7 after that hurt you in the finals? Who knows? But we'll figure it out once we get there. Houston versus Knicks NBA Finals for me. What do you have, and who is taking home chip and the Finals MVP?
I got Cleveland and Denver in this NBA Finals. When we look at NBA history by the decade, there's usually one or two guys that control everything for those 10 years. I think Jokic is already there for the 2020s. Gilgeous-Alexander, probably right behind him too. But it's just so hard to get back to the finals 2 years in a row. I don't think Jokic quits until he gets a second championship. And I think this is a much better team than the one that just took OKC to 7 last year. On the other hand, with Cleveland, I haven't gone much in depth on the Cavs so far, just because they have the same exact roster. They're set. They have to pay their guys. Mitchell, Mobley, Garland, Allen. That is a pretty good thing for the Eastern Conference, though. I could see them ripping off another 20 in a row. Being by themselves at the 1 seed. If Evan Mobley takes another step, I mean, holy crap, dude! We're talking about Tim Duncan territory. I just don't think he's quite that guy. So I am going to take Denver in this series in 7. Of course, the Joker would be the MVP. I just think they have the better all around rotation, kind of like OKC last year, where you got a guy like Christian Brown. I know they did pay him now, but Christian Brown and Peyton Watson, if those guys are only playing 20 something minutes and they're the best defenders on the floor, that's a pretty good situation for Jokic.
My NBA Finals, I do like that we have 2 different teams for our picks, which is cool. I don't think we've had that really feels like any sport in the last 5 years. So Houston versus the Knicks for me. I think this is a great series, but I keep harping on Houston's defense, and I think without Tibbs, that'll hurt the Knicks side when it comes to defensively. And Houston's got the guys that have been there more as well too. I know there's some experience when it comes to that late in the playoffs on the Knicks side, but KD, it's Kevin Durant, man. I don't want to be the simple guy that just says that, but it is that simple. I think when it comes down to it. So I have Houston in 6 games, Finals MVP, Kevin Durant.
That'd be something.
Yeah. On to NBA awards. We have the MVP, the DPOY, the Rookie of the Year, the Sixth Man of the Year, the Most Improved Player of the Year, which is the best award in all of sports, I think. And then the Coach of the Year. We'll start off with the Coach of the Year. We'll go from the back end and get up to the front. Who's winning Coach of the Year, Scott?
I'm going to go with a boring pick and Mike Brown in New York, because there's going to be a learning curve, of course, taking on these type of personalities. And I didn't pick him to win the East like you did, but this is a regular season award. I think the difference between him and Tibbs is going to be very clear to see about 2 months into the season when the Knicks still actually look fresh.
My Coach of the Year is going to be Jamal Mosley, head coach for the Orlando Magic. If they get the 4 seed, I think it's reasonable to say he gets there. It's usually the team that kind of surprises people. So maybe Toronto, they could have a Coach of the Year, but I think at a 7 seed, I don't think they get that, because you're probably still damn close to under 500 at that point. Most Improved Player of the Year, fun award. Usually the NBA kind of sells the way that they do it, though, and just give it to a second-year player that's improved. Who do you think gets it here?
I'm good with Amen Thompson at the top spot. We, referenced him a bunch today. He goes from toolsy wing to now the point guard of a team trying to go to the finals. That's a massive step. But I think if anyone can do it, it's the athletic freak. They got better by the minute last season.
I had a different approach for the Most Improved Player. I had a guy who it was a 6-man jolt off the bench to now the guy who's probably taking 30 shots a game. Benedict Mathurin for the Pacers is just going to get so many shots this year. I think it's reasonable that he comes close to averaging 30 points a game this season. Usually the guy who wins this award gets an all-star appearance as well, too, and I think there's a bit more likely for Mathurin to get the all-star appearance over some of these other guys in the Eastern Conference. So I'll go Benedict. He gets it just by averaging a ridiculous amount of points this year. Sixth man of the year, who do you have here?
I'm going with Nikhil Alexander Walker, another guy I talked about earlier. I expect the Hawks to be pretty good this year, and a lot of that has to do with the number of games played by Jalen Johnson, Kristaps Porzingis. But I think the X factor here is Alexander Walker. He had some huge moments for Minnesota in the playoffs. The Hawks are just really been begging for anybody other than Trae Young to help control the ball. And that's what he does. He can just calm things down for him. And maybe this is another one of those Eastern Conference guys, if he does get the minutes.
My sixth man of the year is going to be Anthony Simons. Finally on a good team in Boston now after the Drew Holiday trade this past season. Think works out for him well. He's got guys around him that can help space the floor as well too. So Simons has a good year off the bench for a good team in Boston and probably scores 18 to 20 points a game. Rookie of the year.
Massive favorite, Cooper Flagg. Dallas should be competitive at the minimum this year, even if you don't have them as high as I did at the 5 seed, because Cooper already has a massive role in place. Like we talked about, this is supposed to be the point guard, kind of like what we're watching Thompson do right now. And if he's doing that as a true freshman, if you will, he's supposed to be in college right now. He reclassified. It's unbelievable. And I know we haven't seen him in a real game yet, but as soon as everyone does, it's going to be minus 1,000 for this award.
Defensive player or not? Wait, I got to give my rookie of the year. I thought it was so easy to just talk about. Cooper Flagg. That's all I really need to say.
Yeah.
That's all it is. Defensive player of the year. Tell me why it's Victor Wembanyama.
Because he should have won it last year, but he got shut down. So if he plays a full season, he should win so many of these awards.
Yeah, pretty easy here. If he stays healthy, he will get this. It's that simple. And he was trained with monks in the offseason. And I'm not talking about the league. MVP award, boring pick, fun pick. What route did you choose?
Both. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, second in a row. We just haven't seen this kind of scoring efficiency from a guard who just like attacks the mid-range and the free throw line since Michael Jordan. And I think that it takes a special guy to take it away from a Jokic or a Wembanyama, and I think SGA is that special guy, and I don't think anyone's going to catch him yet.
I went with a fun pick. Paulo Banchero, my MVP this year. I think he can get close to a triple-double average-wise and high 20 points per game as well, too. I think could get him there. For a supporting cast that I don't think is as good as a Denver or a Thunder, which I think is a good, reasonable way to kind of evaluate this spot as well, too. I think we see another big jump from Paulo this year, and he gets that award. Fun pick. Not often do we see guys in the NBA win this award coming from plus 1,000 or more than that. And I think Paulo's a guy that can do that and has a situation to do that. So I like the odds here. I'll take this chance.
Yeah. And, just because I didn't mention Orlando and Houston as much doesn't mean I don't have them just 2 games behind the guys I talked about. I mean, this should be a really fun season. The league is super jam-packed. There's only a couple of really bad teams that you don't want to watch. Should be a fun year.
Let's get to the MLB player, pitcher, and rookie of the week now as we move on from the NBA. Maybe a bit quick here. Player of the week shouldn't be taking too long. Shohei Ohtani, because he did what?
You couldn't wait just one more game, Shohei. Now I look like an idiot for not picking you. The 3-homer game, the batting average goes from 0 to 500. Vlad Jr. would be right there with them. Same with Springer, except those guys didn't also throw 6 shutout innings in the championship round.
Yeah, Shohei had perhaps the most ridiculous game that we've ever seen. 10 Ks and 6 shutout innings pitched, 3-homer game in the clincher, and he gets player of the week pretty easily. Did he get your pitcher of the week as well, too?
Well, I mean, he definitely deserves it, but I didn't do it. I said, screw it, give me Max Scherzer. A fantastic start in Seattle. And, of course, Ohtani, he has the better game score, but Ohtani's also not 41 years old. So I went with Scherzer. He was throwing 95. He had some of his best stuff since he was in Washington. And when you look at that Seattle lineup that day, Rodriguez, Raleigh, Rosarina, Polanco, 0 hits that night. So shout out to Scherzer, man.
My pitcher of the week is going to be Jeff Hoffman. Four
Mm,
innings, no hits, no runs, one walk, 9 Ks, and his appearances and saves over the course of the series against the Seattle Mariners. Jeff Hoffman's had a very interesting year for the Blue Jays. It's been up and down. He's had some rough moments, and it kind of made you go into the playoffs saying, "Oh, Jeff Hoffman on the mound to close it out." I don't know how good I feel about that. He's been really good since like mid-August, and he was dominant this past week in his appearances. So he'll get my pitch of the week here for the former field prospect and turn into good reliever. Seems to go that way quite often. Rookie of the week, got to be the Miz, right?
yeah, I think the Miz had a slightly better outing than Trey Savage had this week, so went with him again. 5 innings of domination out of the pen. Unfortunately, just not enough to beat the Dodgers.
Yeah, Jacob Mizorowski, my rookie of the week as well too. 5 innings, 3 hits, one earned, one walk, 9 Ks. Interested to see who's going to be our rookie of the week next week because it's kind of you Savage by default. I think at this point, I think he might be the only rookie that's getting playing time when it
Yeah.
comes down to everything. I know there was only 2 hits, I think, from all rookies last week. So I don't know if we're going to be getting a hitter there, maybe a reliever if Savage has a blow up. There's a
Yeah.
rookie, or maybe we have to go by default into a non-rookie. Who knows? But anyways, moving into our World Series prediction with our MVP pick here. Good series, Blue Jays, Dodgers. First game in Toronto on Friday. How do you think this plays out, and who do you think is taking home the Commissioner's Trophy?
I'm not going to change a whole lot from my original pick of Dodgers over Seattle. I still got the Dodgers in 6. Toronto really does feel like a difficult place to play again, and I heard we might even see some Bo Bichette too. But I just think the Dodgers are too powerful this year, man. And if the Dodgers were hosting it, I might have even taken the sweep here. That's how much I respect both sides here. The Dodgers lineup is just too deep. I can't imagine that lineup hitting a cold stretch against some of this Toronto pitching, against like the Rebosses and the Dom Canzones of the world. So Shohei would be my MVP again. If he gets rocked on the mound, I think there's a scenario they could give it to Teoscar or Mookie Betts, but Otani seems pretty locked in these days. The difference, bottom of the lineup and the pitching depth for the Dodgers. 2 runners on. Like I said, it's not Dom Canzone. It's going to be Tommy Edman. That's a massive difference in the series. Uh-oh.
For the Blue Jays, I I picked the Yankees to win the series when they played them. I don't think formally, but I picked the Mariners to win or at least go to the World Series on the AL side. The series against the Dodgers makes you want to pick the Blue Jays, but then you see Snell game 1, Yamamoto game 2, probably Glasnow game 3, and Shohei game 4. You're like, oh, how does that happen? And then you remember going back to the series that we just saw, and I think the Blue Jays did about as well as any team that we've seen against those top tier arms of Seattle. And I think maybe some bullpen mismanagement by Wilson, their manager, but against the starters, I think the Blue Jays looked relatively good and held in there against a really strong lineup with the Mariners. Although I just don't know how it happens against the Dodgers. I'll go Dodgers in 6 games. 6 games will be what I say. I want to see the Blue Jays win it just because I think it'll be really cool to see. But the Dodgers are a superpower, and I don't think it's time that they get stopped yet. So I'll go Dodgers in 6. Blue Jays put up a good fight, and World Series MVP Esteury Ruiz. No,
Don Rushing.
you want to make the fun pick. Ben Rortvedt would be a fun one. That it could not happen. I'll go Will Smith
Okay.
for World Series MVP. I think it's impossible Shohei doesn't win this. If he just plays well and hits a couple homers, has a good outing. But Will Smith could have a big fall classic. So I'll go him.
Yeah.
On to the second half, some college football stuff here. What do you got?
So last week, pretty big for conference standings in college football, but I think this week's going to completely flip the polls. So just as important. Start off with Saturday, 9 a.m. There are two games that impact the playoff in this slot. First, number 8 Ole Miss at 13 Oklahoma. Ole Miss lost their first game last week at Georgia, but the offense under Trinidad Chambliss, I think, is still playoff worthy. The question is, can Oklahoma and a banged up John Mateer keep up with them? Sooners are at a 4.5-point favorite right now, but they also have a pretty bad track record in the SEC so far. This will be interesting. I think on my first reaction, I clicked on Oklahoma on my picks, though. At the same time, another big one for the group of five. The winner of this may very well end up in the 12th spot for the playoff. It's number 18, South Florida. They're going to Memphis. The Tigers were ranked 22nd before they lost to UAB last week, one of Kyle's squads, thanks to college football, 26. So I'm okay with South Florida being a 4.5-point favorite here. Memphis quarterback's questionable with an injury. The Bulls just crushed Boise, and Florida, way more high-powered offense. So at 12:30, another great SEC game. 15 Mizzou goes to number 10 Vandy. And it may not sound like much here, but with all the chaos going this season, a team that can run the ball and have a great power run game has been getting the job done so far. So I really like Vandy minus 2.5 at home. We saw LSU's defense was not even close to stopping the run game last week. And at 4:30, speak of the devil, third double-ranked SEC game. Number 20 LSU host number 3 Texas A&M. I think Nuss has been fine this year, at least in my opinion. I'd still take him in the draft. But that LSU O-line is just a major issue right now. A&M's given up their fair share of points, but they also have one of the best edge rushers in the nation. Cassius Howell, 8 sacks. He could make Nuss's night a disaster. So again, I think I like the line here. A&M 2.5. Still, to have 3 double-ranked matchups in the SEC, this is going to completely flip around the polls. I have one more thing. I was going to do a Heisman watch, and then I realized there's like 14 guys with the same numbers, and we would be here all night long. So I changed my mind. We're flipping the script here. I got the top 5 quarterbacks for the NFL draft, just based off of what I've seen so far. Let's get right into it. Honorable mentions. A couple guys I think should go back to school. Lenore Sellers, Sam Levitt. I would have them ranked pretty high. I just don't see it. I think both these guys have been banged up. Both these guys have some issues around them outside of a number 1 receiver, Nick Harbor, Jordan Tyson. So I don't have them in here anymore. Number 5, John Mateer, Oklahoma. Very reminiscent of Jackson Dart from last year. Very fun, just as dangerous. Can he find that happy middle ground like Baker Mayfield has been able to? It's kind of hard to tell since he broke his thumb. So still on the radar, not really looking at him in the top half of the draft, though. I'd say top half of the first round. Number 4, Garrett Nussmeier on a similar tier as John Mateer. Shorter, compact, pocket passer. I think he's like, if Bo Nix was a little smarter, it'd be a good comparison for him. His ability just to pick apart the defense without having the strongest arm, I think would be a cool experiment for a play caller. So he's got to go to the right spot, though. He can't go to the Jets. Ty Simpson at number 3, Alabama. You would love to see a little more consistency before you take him number 1 overall, but he makes some ridiculously difficult throws for Alabama. And that's why I see a little Kirk Cousins, another guy who could go back to school. Doesn't have to come out. He is a little older, though. I believe he's 21 or 22, so maybe he would come out. That's why I moved him up in my rankings. Number 2, Dante Moore, Oregon. Pretty good athlete, skinny like the Jaden Daniels archetype. Also may need another year in college. I don't know if he would go number 1 if he came out. Very similar to Cam Ward. So another guy I don't think would survive with the Jets or the Browns. Maybe that'll impact his decision if those are the 2 teams picking at the top. And then number 1, I have Fernando Mendoza, Indiana, 6'5". So far, he's the most accurate guy, game manager, but so is Joe Flacco. So I think this is the guy that would succeed the most in a very terrible situation. That's why he's number one. I don't think he's the number one freak athlete, crazy arm guy, but I think he's the guy who could get dropped into a shitty place and go 7-10.
Yeah.
That's what I got.
Maybe thinking about those QBs a little bit more than I should at this point in the year. But we'll see which one I fall in love with and then have the Raiders not take when it comes to the draft. We'll get into our Layups Bowl predictions. This is a rough week. 0-4. I think it's the second straight week that we go 0-4 on our picks. I had the Raiders plus 12.5. God, I'm such an idiot. That doesn't work. Skyler had USC plus 8.5.
Good game.
It was a 10-point game, I want to say at the end. I do think that's a fun game. A lot of NFL talent in that one for sure. But that does not hit. This week, I have basketball picks because I can't hit shit in the NFL right now, even with me doing good in our Pick'em League. I have Detroit minus 4.5 versus Chicago tomorrow. I don't think Chicago's going to be good. Detroit, I know, a little bit banged up, but I think they should be good enough to beat the Bulls by at least 5 points.
Sure. Also avoiding NFL for this pick. Just been a rough week on our sleeper picks. I think you've surpassed me now. Just a couple of really rough weeks. So back to college. Got number 6 Alabama minus 11.5. It is on the road at South Carolina, but that team is just a complete disaster, dude. Like Lenore Sellers can only get the ball off like 18 times a game, even though they call 40 passing plays because he's already getting hit right there. So I think Alabama should be able to beat him by 14.
Last week, bowl predictions. I had Atlanta plus 115 on Monday Night Football versus the Niners. That does not hit. Michael Penix struggles versus a banged-up Niners defense, which I did not expect to see. Skyler had Jacksonville plus 130 versus the Rams in London. I don't know how much of that game that you watched since it was at 6:30 a.m., but Trevor Lawrence looked terrible. And receivers weren't helping him. And so they lose by quite a bit. This week, I have the Toronto Raptors plus 180 versus the Atlanta Hawks tomorrow. Toronto is a bit of my sleeper team. Atlanta, another sleeper team for a lot of people as well, too. I do think this will be a good game. But I'll go Toronto taking the upset here at plus 180, which I think is pretty good odds.
There was one NFL pick I saw, and I was like, this isn't right. This can't be right. So I double-checked. And yeah, the Bears are still plus 230 at Baltimore. Lamar Jackson is still up in the air, I know, but he's not playing, guys. Lamar Jackson is not playing against Chicago. I'm taking Chicago, even though it's on the road against Cooper Rush.
That'll do it for episode 266. Next week, 267. Oh, God, 6-7. Maybe we'll have Alex on as a reminder, but
he'll give us the Chelsea update.
Oh, God, no one needs that. Power rankings for the NFL.
Yep.
Season grades for at least 2 teams in the MLB, probably, or maybe we'll wait until after. Basketball will just be starting to get into it. Eventually, we'll get into free agency predictions for the MLB. So it might not be next week, but the week after that, I think will probably be a good time to do that because things sometimes, while they don't, really go into full swing for a while, can heat up rather quickly in the MLB as far as when people can sign. We already saw Nate Pearson actually signed with the Astros, which is interesting because he got released by the Cubs whenever that happened. But yeah, next week, a lot of good stuff. When does the first legitimate CFP top 25 come out?
I want to say it's November.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
But I feel like things are getting late in the season sooner rather than later at this point. But anyways, see you guys next week.
Yes, sir. Well, can't wait to talk about Shane Bieber to the A's and Alex Bregman to the Dodgers.
That'll be cool. I'll take it.
Peace.
Peace.